She walked into that Sunday gathering as a wife, but before dessert was served, her husband introduced another woman as her replacement. At the long dining table inside the Harrington family estate, Sophia Bennett had expected another quiet afternoon of forced smiles and hidden insults. She had endured those lunches for years. The cold stares, the polished cruelty, the way her mother-in-law Eleanor spoke to her as if she were a guest who had stayed far too long. But that afternoon, Nathan Harrington did something even Sophia had not anticipated. He arrived with Claire Dawson. Claire stepped into the room in a cream silk dress, gold jewelry catching the chandelier light, her hand resting lightly on Nathan's arm. She smiled at everyone as though she belonged there, as if Sophia were the stranger. Nathan showed no shame. He looked almost proud. "This is Claire," he said, his voice smooth and cool. "She understands my world. She knows how to move in the circles our family belongs to." The room went silent. Sophia felt every eye turn toward her. Eleanor lifted her wine glass, waiting for Sophia to lower her head the way she always had. Claire smiled softly, pretending embarrassment while enjoying every second. But Sophia did not cry. She did not beg. She simply placed her napkin on the table, looked at Nathan, and saw him clearly, not as the man she had loved, but as a weak man hiding behind money, pride, and another woman. Then Sophia stood up. Her chair made the smallest sound as it slid back. Yet somehow that tiny scrape cut deeper than a shout. Nathan's smile faded first, then Claire's. Then Eleanor slowly lowered her wine glass, eyes narrowing as if Sophia had broken some invisible rule. For 8 years, Sophia had known that rule. Stay quiet. Stay graceful. Do not embarrass the family. Do not let anyone see the pain. So she had swallowed her words until they turned heavy in her chest. She had smiled through birthday dinners where Nathan forgot her seat at the table. She had thanked Eleanor for compliments that were really insults. She had stood beside Nathan at charity events and business dinners, letting him shine while she quietly fixed what he had broken behind closed doors. But now, standing under the cold glow of the chandelier, Sophia felt something entirely different. Not rage, not panic, freedom. Nathan stepped toward her, his voice low and sharp. "Sophia, sit down." The old Sophia might have obeyed, not from weakness, but because she had loved him, because she had once believed patience could soften cruelty. But this time, she did not move. Claire let out a small laugh, soft enough to sound polite, sharp enough to be felt. "Perhaps this isn't the best moment for a scene." Sophia turned her eyes toward her. There was no hatred in her expression. That almost made it worse. "You're right," Sophia said. "A scene requires something worth fighting for." The room went still. Nathan's jaw tightened. "You're acting like a victim. All I did was tell the truth. Claire fits this family. She understands the life I need." Sophia looked at him for a long moment and saw everything. The young man who once held her hand in a small cafe and admitted he was afraid of failing. The husband who asked for her advice and then repeated her words in boardrooms as his own. The son who let his mother treat his wife like furniture because it was easier than defending her. She saw the man she had loved, and she saw the stranger he had become. Her fingers brushed the edge of the linen napkin. Slowly, she folded it once and placed it beside her untouched plate. No shaking hands, no raised voice, just one clean, quiet movement. "Sophia," Nathan warned. She picked up her bag. Eleanor stood now, anger crossing her face. "You are not walking out of this lunch." Sophia turned toward the doorway. Then she paused, not for Nathan, not for Claire, but because everyone in that room still believed she was leaving empty-handed. They had no idea she was taking the one thing they could never replace. Her approval, her protection, her quiet, unacknowledged strength. Nathan's hand reached out to stop her, then dropped before touching her wrist. That small surrender told Sophia more than any apology ever could. He did not stop out of respect. He stopped because people were watching. So he did what he always did. He turned cruelty into authority. "Don't be childish," he said, loud enough for the room. "You're proving my point." Sophia stopped in the hallway beside a framed wedding portrait from 8 years ago. In the photograph, she was smiling with white roses in her hands. Nathan stood beside her, confident, untouched by failure. Back then, he had still looked at her like she was home. For a moment, the memory almost hurt. Then she remembered the years after. The late-night calls with creditors while Nathan slept. The private meetings with investors who trusted her name more than his promises. The quiet signatures. The personal guarantees. The endless moments where she had saved his pride and let him call it leadership. Nathan never asked how the doors opened. He simply walked through them. And because Sophia never announced her sacrifices, he decided those sacrifices did not exist. That was his greatest mistake. Behind her, Claire's voice drifted into the hallway. Maybe she just needs attention. Sophia turned back. Not sharply, not dramatically, just enough. Attention is what people ask for when they have nothing else, she said. I'm not asking for anything. Claire looked away first. Sophia continued toward the front door. Eleanor called after her. You should be careful, Sophia. Pride ruins women who forget their place. Sophia held her gaze for one steady moment. For years that sentence would have cut her open. But now she understood. They had never mistaken her silence for kindness. They had mistaken it for permission. Her phone buzzed inside her bag. Once. Then again. Nathan noticed immediately. Who keeps calling you? Sophia did not answer. She already knew. The bank. The final restructuring meeting. The agreement Nathan had been celebrating all week as his own achievement. The agreement held together entirely by her signature. No one at that table knew that. Not yet. We are not done, Nathan said, following her 2 steps. Sophia reached the marble entryway. Sunlight poured through the tall glass doors, warm and clear after the chill of the room behind her. She placed her hand on the door handle. Then she looked back at him one last time. No, Nathan, she said quietly. You're not done. She opened the door. And that's the problem. Then Sophia walked out, leaving behind the silence of a room that was about to learn exactly what her silence had been worth. Outside, she stood on the front steps and breathed for the first time all day. Inside, Claire moved to reclaim the room, leaning toward Nathan, her voice soft and practiced. Let her go. She just wants everyone to chase her. Eleanor nodded at once. Exactly. Sophia has always been too sensitive. Nathan wanted to believe them. Claire was simpler. She laughed at his jokes, admired his name, looked at him the way he always wanted to be seen. She knew which restaurants mattered, which galas required which dress. She looked perfect beside him. That was the trap. Claire knew how to enter a room. Sophia knew how to keep the walls from falling down. At the dining table, Uncle Richard stared at the beige envelope Sophia had left beside her plate. He opened it slowly. The first page slid out, then the second, then a signed letter from a legal office. The color drained from his face. Nathan, he said, his voice low and shaken. Sophia isn't leaving empty-handed. Nathan frowned. What are you talking about? Richard held up the document. She's the guarantor. The word struck the room like shattering glass. Eleanor's hand flew to her pearls. Nathan blinked. Once, twice. As if the sentence had been spoken in another language. Claire looked from face to face, waiting for someone to explain why the air had changed. But no one did, because suddenly her elegance was useless. She could stand beautifully. She could smile beautifully. But she could not save the Harrington family. And Sophia, the woman they had just humiliated, was already walking away with the only power that truly mattered. A dark sedan rolled through the gates and stopped behind Sophia's car. A man in a formal suit stepped out with a woman carrying a leather portfolio. Nathan recognized him from the bank. His stomach dropped. The banker walked up the path, relief crossing his face. Miss Bennett, thank you. We need your in-person authorization before the restructuring can proceed. Claire took one step back. Eleanor's lips parted but produced no sound. Nathan looked at Sophia as though she had wronged him simply by matching more than he had allowed himself to believe. You were going to sign today? He asked. Sophia looked past him toward the dining room, toward her untouched plate beside the chair he had tried to give away. Yes, she said, before you introduced Claire as the woman who belonged in your world. No one breathed. Then Sophia placed the folder into the banker's hands. But I will not sign today. Nathan went pale. Eleanor gripped the railing. Sophia stepped toward the open car door. This family has spent years believing my silence meant I had nothing to say. She turned back one last time. Now you can read the envelope. And with that, Sophia Bennett stepped into the car, leaving Nathan Harrington on the steps of his estate, surrounded by wealth, family, and a woman who could not rescue him. The car rolled past the fountain and disappeared beyond the iron gates. For several seconds, no one moved. Inside, the dining room no longer looked like a place of power. Sophia's chair sat empty. Her napkin lay folded beside her untouched plate with quiet precision. That single fold made Nathan's chest tighten. Even in leaving, she had been composed. Even in pain, she had given the room more dignity than it deserved. Richard set the papers on the table. The bank has been clear. Without Sophia, the restructuring stops. Eleanor snapped. There must be another option. Richard looked at her with tired eyes. There was one. She just drove away. Nathan lowered himself into his chair and stared at the documents. Sophia's name appeared again and again, not as a spouse, not as decoration, but as the foundation. His throat tightened. He remembered her trying to warn him. The folders she placed before him. The late nights. The calls she made on his behalf. The deals she quietly rebuilt after he had broken them. He had called her dramatic. He had called her sensitive. He had brought another woman to lunch and called it honesty. Claire remained near the doorway, no longer close enough to touch him, no longer confident enough to speak for him. Her beauty had not changed, but the room had stopped caring about it. Nathan picked up his phone and typed, "I finally see what you carried. I am sorry." He stared at it for a long moment, then sent it. Across the city, Sophia's phone lit up. She read the words once. Her expression did not change, not because they meant nothing, but because they had arrived too late to undo what had already been done. 3 days later, the Harrington estate felt like a courtroom. The dining table had been cleared of crystal and silverware. In their place, laptops, audit reports, legal folders, and bank representatives who spoke in measured voices that made Eleanor's skin crawl. Sophia sat at the head of the table, not in the wife's seat, not beside Nathan. At the head, Grace, her attorney, sat to her right. The bank's team sat to her left. Every number was examined, every transfer questioned, every family expense placed under a light so clear that nothing could hide. The reckless expansion Sophia had warned against. The consulting fees paid to relatives who had never consulted anything. The unpaid vendors. The family withdrawals labeled as operational costs. By evening, the conclusion was unavoidable. Harrington Capital could survive, but not as it had been. Independent oversight, quarterly audits, frozen family withdrawals, an external financial board. Nathan could remain involved, but not without accountability. And Sophia's role would be formally documented in the company record. Not whispered, not implied, written down. Nathan signed first. His hand trembled slightly. Then Richard. Then the bank. Finally, the folder was placed before Sophia. Everyone in that room watched her. For years they had watched her to see if she would break. Now they watched to see if she would save them. Sophia read the final page carefully, the section acknowledging her personal guarantees, her financial contributions, her required protections going forward. Then she signed. The company survived. But something else ended. "Thank you," Nathan said quietly. 2 words. Too late for the marriage. Not entirely meaningless. Sophia nodded once. "You're welcome." No warmth. No cruelty. Just closure. She gathered her folder and walked toward the door. This time, no one ordered her to stay. This time, they all understood. She had saved the company, but she had not returned to her place. She had claimed a new one. Weeks later, Sophia moved into a quiet apartment overlooking the city. No marble halls. No family portraits watching her every step. Just morning light, fresh flowers, and days that belonged entirely to her. She returned to work under her own name, Sophia Bennett. Not Mrs. Harrington. Not Nathan's wife. Not the silent force behind another man's legacy. Her own name. One afternoon, while signing the first contract for her new consulting firm, she paused. Her hand was steady. For the first time in years, she was not preserving a family that had erased her. She was building a future that honored who she truly was. Never confuse silence with weakness. Some people carry the weight of a family, a business, or an entire relationship without ever asking for recognition. But even the most patient heart has a limit. Honor the people who stand beside you before life teaches you their worth through their absence. Because walking away is not always giving up. Sometimes, it is the first brave step toward becoming yourself again.